Hinagi stood trembling before MC, her bare skin flushed with unease and shame, words caught in her throat as she struggled to meet his eyes. MC urged her to come to her senses, but she refused, shaking her head with quiet defiance. She told him that back then, she had been wrong, but now, she understood exactly what she was doing. All this time, regret had haunted her, wrapping around every sleepless night as her sister's warmth turned to cold silence and her parents' voices rose in scolding disapproval. The weight of her guilt crushed her because she knew she had hurt him. Her voice wavered as she begged MC not to look away, confessing that she had never been intimate with her ex-boyfriend. She explained that the boy, an older senior whose name barely lingered in her memory, had confessed to her out of nowhere, and though she was embarrassed, his timing could not have been crueler. The very next day, she told MC about the confession, hoping that it would stir something in him. But MC's reaction was nothing, silence, calm indifference. He never showed joy, anger, or affection, his composure only deepened her frustration. Desperate to provoke a reaction, she began to act recklessly, clinging to childish jealousy and cowardly tricks that only left her disgusted with herself. When MC finally confessed, admitting he had loved her all along and had planned to do so at the summer festival, the moment should have been beautiful, but instead, he retracted it all, saying he was arrogant to think someone like him could belong beside her. Before she could respond, he fled, leaving her voice caught in the air. She wanted to tell him she loved him too, to chase after him and make it right, but she was already entangled in a meaningless relationship with the senior. For 2 hollow weeks, she endured that farce until one day, when her silence pushed him too far, he seized her face and forced a kiss on her. Shocked and furious, Hinagi slapped him and ran, her heart breaking under the weight of humiliation and sorrow. That night, she cried until her voice gave out, sick with the thought that she had been touched by someone she never loved, that what she had longed to share with MC had been stolen by a moment of her own weakness. Then, as if mocking her misery, her phone buzzed with a single text from her boyfriend, Kurt, final, they were done. After that day, the whispers began, ugly, cruel, and relentless. Rumors spread that Hinagi had been intimate with her ex-boyfriend, and she knew instantly that he was the one who had started them, taking revenge for being rejected. The gossip tore through the school like wildfire, feeding on teenage cruelty, as her classmates devoured the scandal as if it were entertainment. She denied it again and again, but only a handful of people believed her. Every time she walked through the hallways, she could feel the stares, hear the whispers, and sense the judgment that followed her like a shadow. What made it worse was that she could not even claim innocence, because she, too, had been foolish and selfish. She had played with feelings she didn't understand, turned love into a hollow contract, and now, the emptiness inside her felt well-deserved. The rumor soon reached home, where the disappointment in her sister's eyes stung more than any gossip. Her parents scolded her for the first time in her life, and when her mother asked if MC knew, she couldn't bring herself to answer. The thought of him hearing those lies made her heart ache. She couldn't bear for the person she loved most to think she was that kind of girl. Yet when she finally gathered the courage to tell him the truth, MC only sneered and told her not to touch him, a reaction so foreign that her entire body went numb. From that moment, the rumor became accepted as fact, and whatever bond they once had dissolved completely. Hinagi blamed herself, realizing that even without this scandal, her pride and immaturity might have hurt him in the end. He had always been there for her, listening with quiet patience, holding her hand even when she pushed him away. And yet she had thrown that away. Now, standing before him once more, tears streaking her face, Hinagi begged MC to end their shared regret, her voice trembling as she confessed that she had always loved him. When he remained silent, she pressed on, saying it had taken her so long to say something so simple, and now she wanted to prove it. Pulling him into her arms, she whispered that she would give all of herself to him, and together they fell onto the bed. Hinagi admitted she had dreamed of this moment for years, apologizing softly because she had imagined something more romantic, then smiled, a smile not of innocence, but of a woman who had found her truth at last. MC stared up at her, realizing how beautiful she was, how much she had changed. Gently, he urged her to slow down, telling her she didn't have to do this, that it had always been her who stayed beside him, not the other way around. But Hinagi shook her head, her eyes glistening with resolve, and whispered that she wanted to, because this time, it was her choice. She wanted MC to touch her, no one else, no one from her past, no ghost of a mistake. But the moment her trembling words reached him, MC froze, panic flickering in his eyes as he told her she didn't need to do this just to prove her innocence, that she didn't have to prove anything at all. Yet Hinagi shook her head softly, her voice steady in its honesty as she told him he was wrong, that this wasn't about proving something, it was about finally being happy simply because she was with him. Then, taking his hand, she gently pressed it against her chest, letting him feel the rhythm of her heartbeat, rapid, fragile, and painfully real. The world seemed to fall silent around them. That heartbeat carried him back to the past, to the days when they were children, when words were unnecessary and their hearts had understood each other in perfect quiet. And now, standing on the edge of what they had once lost, it felt as if the frayed thread between them was being tied again, weak, trembling, but real. Still, he couldn't stop himself from asking why now? Why after all this time? Hinagi's lips trembled as she admitted she had been too much of a coward, too afraid to say what she truly felt. Her answer only deepened his confusion, and his voice cracked as he demanded again why she waited until now, his own heart aching with something raw and desperate. Flustered, she pleaded that she was afraid time was slipping away, afraid it might already be too late. MC's voice dropped to a whisper as he said he would have accepted her feelings back then, but now, everything felt wrong. That day, the one that had broken everything, still haunted him. He had believed she no longer wanted him, and he had given up chasing something that no longer existed. Even now, after all she had done, he couldn't accept her feelings. He wasn't worthy of them. In his mind, Hinagi was sunlight, and he was something darker, something that ruined everything it touched. A flicker of madness crossed his thoughts as he imagined himself as a demon king who had conquered half the world, wondering if destruction was simply in his nature. Maybe he had always misunderstood the kindness of others, maybe the ones who reached out to him were never wrong, and it was he who was broken. MC's eyes shut tight as the noise in his mind swelled, and guilt pressed against his chest like a vice. Then Hinagi's panicked voice cut through the haze, calling his name, asking if he was all right because he looked pale and distant. Her concern only deepened the ache inside him. Her warmth crashed into him like a tide, suffocating yet gentle, making his emotions spill dangerously close to the surface. And amidst it all, a dark question took root: why was it so easy for her to bear herself before someone like him? Why only now, after everything had been lost? He didn't want to misunderstand her, didn't want to believe she pitied him, but he was already too far gone. The edges of his thoughts blurred into despair. He was tired of hurting others, tired of being misunderstood, tired of existing in a world that no longer wanted him. The only peace he could imagine was silence. And in that moment of stillness, a chilling realization dawned on him: perhaps disappearing was the only plan that ever truly made sense. As MC drifted through the storm of his thoughts, Hinagi suddenly leaned in and kissed him, softly at first, then tremblingly, her tears mixing with his breath. Her voice quivered as she whispered that everything was okay now, that she would never hurt him again. MC froze, his mind stuttering as he watched the tears streak down her cheeks, wondering what sadness still haunted her, what pain still lingered behind her fragile smile. But before he could make sense of it, panic surged inside him, a desperate reminder not to misinterpret her kindness, not to twist her feelings into something selfish. Then, almost without thinking, he called her by her first name for the first time, and the sound of it broke her. Hinagi's tears turned to joy as she smiled through them, saying that both her first and second kisses belonged to him. Her happiness cut into him like a blade, and for a fleeting moment, he wished she would stop smiling, because that smile, so pure and trusting, only deepened his guilt. Hinagi wrapped her arms around him tightly, swearing that from now on, she would always be honest. Through her tears, she laughed softly that the childhood friend was always doomed to lose, or so the stories said, but she refused to let go of him, not this time. She confessed that she had been consumed by her darker thoughts once, that she had lost herself completely, but none of that mattered anymore. All that mattered was that she loved him truly, deeply, painfully. Her words washed over MC like sunlight he couldn't look at directly, and though he wanted to believe her smile, some part of him still doubted it, terrified that it was all a fragile dream. That night, he walked home alone through the rain, its chill sinking into his bones as questions flooded his mind. How long had he been like this, cold, detached, convinced that everything could only end in ruin? Somewhere along the way, he had turned into someone unrecognizable, a man who treated every emotional wound like a strategy, every feeling like a calculation. His mind, once sharp as steel, now felt frayed and hollow. He asked himself why he hadn't noticed the distortion sooner, why he hadn't questioned his own cracks before they split him open. When he finally reached home, drenched and lost, he realized he couldn't move on without answers. So, almost instinctively, he went to Yuri's room. She opened the door in surprise, her eyes wide as he stood there awkwardly asking if they could talk. When he called her big sister, she froze in disbelief and then, without warning, threw her arms around him, sobbing uncontrollably. Startled, MC stood stiff for a moment, wondering if the entire world had gone mad that day, first Hinagi, now Yuri, both collapsing into his arms. His usual self-deprecating humor flickered briefly. If his mind weren't as unbreakable as the Yamato, he'd have sunk by now. Yet even as the thought passed, he gently hugged his sister back, realizing that maybe this was what moving forward looked like, one broken connection repaired at a time. The next morning, he dragged himself to school utterly drained. He hadn't planned to fall asleep in his sister's embrace, and now he carried a fatigue that wasn't just physical.